The Carnage symbiote bonds to the Silver Surfer to create Carnage Cosmic in this week's episode of Comic History. What's up guys, Roman from R&S Entertainment here, and welcome to another episode of Comic History, the weekly show where I explain and retell iconic storylines, origins, and events in the world of comics. This week, we're diving into the two-part Carnage Cosmic storyline that occurred in Amazing Spider-Man issues 430 and 431 in 1998, written by former Marvel Comics editor-in-chief and longtime Marvel writer and editor Tom DeFalco, who actually co-wrote the first appearance of Black Costume Spider-Man in Amazing Spider-Man 252 in 1984, taking over the title completely 2 issues later and beginning a 2-year run on the book. DeFalco would then go on to be Marvel's editor-in-chief from 1987 to 1994, and during this time, along with Marvel becoming a public share company, their net profits from publishing soared, raising by 500%. Clashing with upper management at Marvel, DeFalco was forced out of the editor-in-chief position in 1994, and returned to writing Spider-Man around that time, being one of the writers for Maximum Carnage, writing on Spectacular Spider-Man from 94 to 95, and then returning to Amazing Spider-Man in 1996. A short 2 years before the original Amazing Spider-Man title that had ran since 1963 was relaunched for the first time, leading into the Howard Mackie and J. Michael Straczynski runs in the early 2000s. Tom DeFalco also wrote the 100-issue Mayday Parker Spider-Girl series in the MC2 universe, which we have covered in a previous episode of Comic History. The reason I'm delving so deeply into the history of Tom DeFalco as a Spider-Man writer and Marvel's editor-in-chief in a video about Carnage and the Silver Surfer is that all of this context ties directly into the B-plot of the story, where longtime Spider-Man supporting character Robbie Robertson is pushed out and alienated from his job as editor-in-chief of the Daily Bugle. The Robbie story does work on its own, but I feel that with the little bit of extra context on DeFalco, we can see why the dialogue comes off so personal and emotional, especially seeing as this is one of the last issues of his run on Amazing Spider-Man, and in fact one of the last issues of the first Amazing Spider-Man series overall. Other than that, this is a crazy fun story about the Silver Surfer becoming Carnage and Spider-Man wrestling with his morality, so let's jump right in. Carnage Cosmic begins with Spider-Man swinging towards the former headquarters of the Fantastic Four at Four Freedoms Plaza, ecstatic that they, along with the Avengers, had returned to the Marvel Universe following their disappearance in the X-Men event Onslaught. One of many times in this book we see direct references bordering on advertisements for other titles coming out at the time, including Heroes Reborn, which detailed the return of all of the superheroes lost in Onslaught, and also the Thunderbolts, a group of villains posing as heroes at the behest of Norman Osborn, leading to them taking over the Fantastic Four's headquarters while they were away, and Norman poisoning the public opinion of Spider-Man. Taking a leadership position at the Daily Bugle, and along with running constant smear campaigns against the Wallcrawler, had offered a $1 million reward for his capture, dead or alive, following Spider-Man being shown publicly attacking Osborn. Despite the bounty on his head and constant problems in his life, including the recently ended Clone Saga, Spider-Man allows the return of the superheroes to fill him with hope and optimism. The same cannot be said about his wife, Mary Jane, who he meets up with at Empire State University before class, with her furious at him for risking putting on his costume with the bounty on Spider-Man's head, making him a constant target. Peter apologizes, saying that with everything bad that had happened, he got carried away when he heard about the Fantastic Four's return. He promises to let the superheroes' return be a reason for him to take a break from being Spider-Man, saying that he won't put on the costume again until the heat dies down. And though they both leave each other with a smile, the tension between them is mounting, as Peter has told MJ this multiple times before and not followed through. Meanwhile, at the Ravencroft Institute, the mental asylum tasked with the responsibility of containing Carnage, a bureaucrat insists that the specialized cell and technology designed to keep the Carnage symbiote from escaping is a waste of money, as Cletus Kasady had appeared to be in a vegetative state for months, shutting down the machines despite multiple warnings from the men guarding the facility. Carnage immediately breaks out of his cell, killing everyone around him and declaring that he's anxious to get revenge on Spider-Man. At the Daily Bugle, Robbie Robertson confronts J. Jonah Jameson, who has changed and abandoned many of his principles since Norman Osborn gained an ownership position at the Bugle. And when JJ's response is to just continue smoking his cigar, Robbie tells him he made his choice, and now Robbie has to make his own about whether or not to resign. Walking through the familiar halls of the place that had been his work and passion for years, Robbie feels like a stranger as changes are taking place above his pay grade, with Norman Osborn shopping around for a new editor-in-chief right in front of him. Meanwhile, Robbie's wife Martha enters the Daily Bugle's elevator, heading toward the newsroom to meet him for lunch, casually mentioning that she was his husband to a stranger in the elevator, who turns out to be Cletus Kasady, who decides to use her to send a message to Robertson and the Daily Bugle. Hearing a scream, Robbie and Peter Parker, who was in the building to use the Bugle's resources to learn the whereabouts of the Fantastic Four, both run to the elevator and find Martha lying on the ground gripping her arm, with the words "Carnage rules" painted in blood on the wall. While Robertson yells for an ambulance, Peter stands horrified at Carnage being on the loose, immediately donning his Spider-Man costume, knowing that Carnage lives only to kill and destroy. And despite his promise to Mary Jane, he is unwilling to let people die because Spider-Man failed to act. Walking down the street, Cletus Kasady thinks to himself that Robertson's wife probably created a massive panic, briefly considering leaving his victims alive and maimed more often, but then thinking nah, and then noticing a man parking in a handicap spot. Yelling to the man that he'll cripple him so he deserves the spot, Kasady becomes Carnage and lifts his car into the air. Spider-Man swings in and saves the man, with Carnage slashing out at him with the symbiote, saying that their fans have been waiting for their next grudge match, and that they should give them their money's worth. Several bystanders crowd up near the fight, planning to wait until Carnage kills Spider-Man and then take his body in for the $1 million reward, with Carnage saying that he doesn't kill for profit, that he's an artist, and kills for the sheer joy of it. At this point, the Silver Surfer, who is free from servitude under Galactus, visits Earth to meet with his burgeoning love interest, Alicia Masters, but sees Spider-Man facing off with Carnage below and races to help, as the Silver Surfer has a great compassion and regard for life, helping to save people whenever possible. When Carnage sees the Silver Surfer, the Carnage symbiote screams that it knows him, writhing off of Cletus and escaping into the sewers, leaving Kasady writhing on the ground screaming that he's alone. The Silver Surfer tells Spider-Man that he had come into contact with symbiotes before in his travels through space, and dissolves a section of the street to pursue it into the sewers, saying that the entire world might be at risk. Spider-Man asks Cletus why the symbiote deserted him, and he says that it recognized the Silver Surfer, and had some form of genetic memory driving it to seek revenge, but that the only way the Carnage symbiote knew to defeat the Surfer was to bond with him. Suddenly, the ground erupts, and the Carnage Silver Surfer hybrid screams that its mind is aflame with madness, that the empathic and compassionate Silver Surfer is no more, and all that is left is Carnage Cosmic. Spider-Man rushes at Carnage Cosmic, hoping to take him down quickly before his conflicting personalities can integrate and bond completely. But as it launches Carnage tendrils with cosmic energy blasts inside, Spider-Man thinks that he could barely survive against Carnage when it had a human host, let alone a cosmic entity, which is entirely overkill. The Silver Surfer fights for control, briefly breaking through to talk to Spider-Man, saying that the symbiote was attempting to drive him insane, and though Spider-Man tells him they'll work together to find a way to stop it, the Surfer yells that he has to fight this battle alone and blasts up towards space. At Midtown Memorial Hospital, Robbie questions his wife about Carnage, trying to understand why he spared her when he always murders his victims outright. She angrily tells him that Kasady is easy to understand. He had spared her to be a constant reminder to Robbie that he couldn't protect her, and saying that he should be more worried about his injured wife than the story on Carnage. Suddenly, Spider-Man crashes through the hospital, carrying Cletus Kasady, who is still writhing in pain and screaming after being separated from his symbiote. Dropping him off as the police arrive, they then train their guns on Spider-Man, saying that there is an arrest warrant on him and forcing him to fight his way free from the hospital. In the depths of space, Carnage Cosmic is carving through galaxies, with the Silver Surfer personality underneath trying to outrun the images the Carnage symbiote assaults his mind with. He sees a memory of a long time ago when Silver Surfer had come across a planet whose dominant species had been entirely overtaken by symbiotes. But instead of offering them compassion or communication, he had simply summoned Galactus, who proceeded to devour the world and massacre all of its inhabitants. The symbiotes who had escaped the planetary destruction considered the Surfer's actions so great a crime that they had seared it into their genetic memory, so that all symbiotes of their line would have an inherent desire to seek revenge against him. Back on Earth, Spider-Man tries to contact the Avengers for help, but Jarvis informs him that though the members had returned during Heroes Reborn, they had yet to contact him or show up at Avengers Mansion, which is yet another advertisement within the comic for the then upcoming Avengers title. At the hospital, Robbie discusses his work predicament with his wife, telling her that though J. Jonah Jameson was a good man deep down, He had let his obsession with Spider-Man slowly degrade his moral fiber and decisions, eventually culminating in his deal with the devil when he made a pact with Norman Osborn, tarnishing what was left of the Bugle's integrity. Spider-Man checks back in on Cletus Kasady, hearing from inside his heavily guarded hospital room that Cletus is wasting away from an advanced form of stomach cancer, and that the symbiote had been the only thing keeping him alive. This is a random throwaway page in the issue, but very surprising to see this early on in the comics, as the cancer angle would come back in a big way with Eddie Brock, leading up to and during his time as Anti-Venom. Swinging away, Spider-Man thinks to himself that Cletus Kasady is the closest thing to pure evil Spider-Man has ever seen, and that it would be so easy to let him die by preventing the symbiote from rejoining with him, but wrestling with the decision as Spider-Man generally refuses to let anyone die if he can help it, no matter how evil. In space, the Silver Surfer continues to fight against the madness being infused into his mind by the Carnage symbiote, experiencing the life of Cletus Kasady and the abuse and pain that he suffered that led to him becoming Carnage. In the last dark corner of his mind, the Silver Surfer's true former identity of Norrin Radd makes its last stand against the corruption of Carnage, feeling only compassion and empathy in the face of the chaotic emotions of the symbiote. Briefly having regained control of his body, the Silver Surfer Carnage rockets back to Earth, flying straight towards the hospital room of Cletus Kasady. Wanting to prevent the symbiote from returning to Kasady, Spider-Man attacks Silver Surfer, who yells that he has to let the symbiote return to its human host. Dodging cosmic blasts and symbiote tendrils, Spider-Man says that Carnage was one of the worst serial killers in history, and that Spider-Man and the Surfer should work together and destroy the symbiote instead. Carnage Cosmic tells Spider-Man that Cletus will die without the symbiote, and Spider-Man still refuses, willing to let Kasady die to avoid unleashing Carnage back on the world. The Surfer tells Spider-Man to think that Carnage has a special bond with Kasady, one it is currently attempting to recreate with Silver Surfer, and so Spider-Man has a choice between a human host or one with almost godlike cosmic power. Cletus screams in his hospital room, and Spider-Man follows the Silver Surfer as he breaks through the walls, webbing up the guards as the Carnage symbiote abandons the Silver Surfer's body and rejoins with Cletus Kasady, who leaps up from the bed as Carnage, declaring that he was going to go on an epic slaughter spree. The Silver Surfer tells Carnage that he had seen his innermost self and found it lacking, and blasts Carnage with cosmic power, using it to seal Carnage within an unbreakable shell of silver energy. The Silver Surfer says that while he considers all life valuable and was unwilling to allow Carnage to die, he is willing to encase him forever to punish him for his crimes and protect those he would kill. The story ends with Robbie Robertson telling J. Jonah Jameson that he is resigning from the Daily Bugle, that he had to take stock of his life and make the changes he needed to make. And that wraps up Carnage Cosmic, a two-part story during the final days of the original Amazing Spider-Man ongoing series, post-Clone Saga, that mixes fun, ridiculous action with the Carnage Surfer, an emotional meta-commentary and reflection of Tom DeFalco's career at Marvel through the B-plot with Robbie Robertson, and a lot of advertising for other books. And I didn't even mention all of the ads, there were at least one or two others that I ignored in the retelling. It is fun seeing the Silver Surfer become bonded with the Carnage symbiote, it doesn't go overboard with the consequences of that, and it's an interesting springboard to talk to you guys about the changes and eras of Spider-Man throughout Marvel's history. If you enjoyed this video or are a fan of Carnage, Spider-Man, or comics in general, make sure to leave me a comment, thumbs up the video, subscribe to RNS Entertainment for weekly videos on comics, movies, and more, follow my social media, and make sure to check out the Spider-Man Symbiotes History playlist and the Comic History playlist for more stories like this, including my giant-sized 90th episode that came out last week on Venom Lethal Protector. If you want to commission an episode of Comic History on any story you want, or just help support the channel and help me make bigger and better videos, you can check out my Patreon at patreon.com/rnsentertainment. I want to give a huge thanks and shout out to Drew Miles for being a $10 patron this month, and I will see you all next time.